This is just a quick one. How long do I wait to get an accurate postprandial glucose response with a glucometer?
It varies a bit with age and the food you've had. So if it's sugar and you're young, it'll go up within 15 to 30 minutes.
That's dairy, so if I was wanting to test between milk, yogurt and cream in a smoothie.
Yeah. Well, generally the peak will be between about half an hour and an hour. But it'll be faster the more liquid and sugary it is, and it'll be slower. It could be even be beyond an hour if it's a complex carb with fat in it.
So I've got two questions on the same topic. How often should we do this 30, 60, 90 minute glucose monitoring in blood sugar?
So are you trying to determine whether you're tolerant to some carbohydrate source, or what would be the purpose in testing that?
Just on an ongoing basis.
Just on a one-game basis of seeing how food responds to you? I think once you get that response, then you know how that food responds to you. And you don't have to keep repeating that test unless you just like pricking your finger like Jimmy Moore did for a year.
Well, I don't like pricking my finger, that's why I'm asking the question. But okay, I think I've got it. Then the other question relates to a personal story, my own story. So after 7 months of banting, as it's known in South Africa, my HDL is still incredibly low. It's 1.12. Any thoughts on that? Anyone?
As far as what sort of exercise are you doing?
Yeah, quite a lot.
Doing a lot of exercise. You're not a smoker?
No Bex.
No.
Long time ago.
Do you eat a lot of saturated fat?
Yes. My trigs are very low. It's 0.7.
And what's the lowest your HDL's been?
1.12. Yeah.
But the lowest has been below 1 before you went on to all of this?
No, previously it was 1.2, so it's in the same
It
range.
hasn't really changed.
No.
It usually does go up. I mean, if it had been below 1 and didn't move, well, there are some genetic forms of lacking hypoalpha-lipoproteinemia, it's called. But I have seen patients like that. And usually when often they're pretty keen like low protein diets and they need to get some protein into their diet. That can be a thing. I'm sure you've got enough protein. And the only trick that I've got up the sleeve is sort of soybean product, which is you need to find a phytoestrogen to try to get HDL up if the diet's not working for you. But that's it's unusual. It should go up. It usually goes up. So yeah. The other thing is as well. Remember how we measure these things. So and this applies with every blood test. If you don't believe it, get it done somewhere else.
I guess that does raise my last question. How often should we do this?
Look, as I said before, I think if you've got a family history of heart disease and you're starting on a diet, I would check it within a month or two. But after that, it's really just impatience and feedback, like you're on the path, like the ketones. But once you're on, I don't think you need to check it more than every year.
Can I just toss in, we sometimes get obsessed with numbers. We haven't got all the answers. As time goes on, we'll get more answers, but if one of your numbers isn't good, should you listen to it? I think we should be just taking it on board with all the rest of how we are, how we feel, are we trending in the right direction? So yeah, I do see a lot of some people getting a bit carried away with perhaps say one number which doesn't fit the whole equation.
I've got a personal example of that. I actually had my PSA, which is a key prostate health number, run last year. It was 20, which is incredibly high. Did I freak out? No, Christine did. But I didn't freak out because then I had it retested and it came back 0.6. So sometimes you have wonky numbers like that. You never rely on one test to make any kind of judgment call about your health.
Thank you.
I've got a question about carbs and whether you should be counting total carbs or net carbs.
What I found was when I first started, I was just counting net carbs. Then I got my glucometer and I started looking at my food a bit deeper, and I was eating too many Quest bars at one point because there were something like 3 or 4 grams of net carbs, but 20 grams of fibre, and I found that raised my blood sugars and kicked me out of ketosis. So I think you just have to test, and it depends on your body.
And the other question I've got might be a little bit off topic. I'm a small animal veterinarian, and there's also an obesity epidemic in our dogs and cats. And I'm wondering whether there's anything that's translatable to veterinary medicine from these.
Can I chip in? I reckon just about everything. What do we give dogs and cats to eat? We give them, carbohydrate. We don't give them meat anymore. And is it a surprise that they've got high carb diets and they're getting diabetes and they're getting every sort of condition that we're getting? And sometimes it appears worse. Would that be your observation?
Dogs are largely immune mediated, type 1 equivalent. Cats are about 50-50. I guess what I'm also looking for is evidence-based in terms of whether we should be changing what we feed our dogs and cats. But I am becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the sorts of foods that we are giving them. I just wondered if anyone had any evidence or any...
Yeah, I actually interviewed a veterinarian on the Living La Vida Low Carb show about 3 years ago, and he puts his patients' cats on the Catkins diet. And it's a very low carb, high protein, high fat diet. Because, you look at all the kibble, and I'm sure it's the same in here in Australia, it's all wheat and grain-based, although I'm seeing more and more kind of grain-free pet foods now. So they're paying attention that it's the grains that are really causing problems. But yeah, high protein, low carb seems to do very well with
and
animals.
cats are obligate carnivores, so that makes sense as well.
And farmers feed grain to their cows and they want that.
But again, it's the evidence base that I'm quite interested in. Thank you so much for your contributions today.
Thanks for a great day. I just have a question about magnesium, the importance of magnesium. Should we be supplementing this way of eating?
I'd say get raw cacao nibs if you can, because they're high in magnesium, and if you don't get it from food, then there's plenty of supplements, and I personally take about 400 milligrams of magnesium daily.
Why?
For electrolytes, I've read it in a couple of different areas and books, and it's when you're on a low carb diet, you normally need more electrolytes, especially because you normally tend to lose a lot more fluids. So keep the salt up, keep the potassium up, and the magnesium as well.
I would say test for micronutrient deficiency, get a bone profile test that will give you magnesium serum levels, and then you can supplement appropriately. I think kind of supplementing blindly may not be beneficial. So I would validate through some testing first, and then you can get the appropriate advice as to what you should be supplementing, and whether you can just do it through food or you need additional assistance.
I think I'll supplement with cacao nibs now.
Yeah, can I toss in on this, because I don't take any supplements except for magnesium, and the reason being is Steve Finney told me to do it. That's one reason. But secondly, it does appear that with our modern agricultural farming processes, both animals and everything we farm, that our soils get magnesium deplete. The other thing that I understand is almost all of the magnesium in the body, and Ken might help me with this, is it's not in the blood. So when you do the blood test, there's only 1% of the magnesium is there. So I actually have a normal magnesium of 0.8, normal range being 0.6 to 1.2, so mine's 0.85. But can I be assured that that is all throughout my body where I need it working? And my understanding is, no, I can't be reassured by that, because most of it's in sort of bony stores, and I could still be magnesium deplete. And the other point on magnesium is taking it orally. It takes months to get it up to a good level, but that's almost a bit of a lay take on it. Has anybody got any better information on that?
No, right. So the blood level is unreliable. That's not where magnesium's supposed to be. So the blood level, if it's really, really low, it might be important, but if it's slightly low, it means nothing. You can measure it in urine to look at balance, because if you're losing it in the urine, but we really don't have a good test for the magnesium. And it's a bit like vitamin D. Why do you need to measure it? Just go out and get some sunlight. So same with magnesium. If you know, and magnesium's required wherever energy is spent in the body. That's crucial to metabolism and muscle strength and cramps and everything else. So if you want to maintain that, you need magnesium in the body. Just get some. Don't bother measuring it, please.
Yeah, I'd have to disagree. From an exercise science point of view, there are some very good bone density profile tests that you can get.
Not in blood.
That include blood, not predominantly blood, but there are tests you can get to give you some reassurance. But in the UK, it's a bone. You get a bone profile test. So usually women who are suspected of osteopenia, who have low bone density from, say, DEXA scan, would have these tests. So I'm not sure what the equivalent is in Australia, but if you Google bone density, bone profile tests in the UK, you will get the type of test that you will need to go for.
Just to tell you about the complexity of the blood, magnesium is a positively charged metal anion. It's got charge to it. It's carried around by negatively charged things in the blood. And so its level of the blood depends just as much on the concentrations of the negative things in the blood as the magnesium itself. And we can do some corrections like that, albumin-corrected magnesium levels, which would be better. That's not what clinicians do. They just look at the raw magnesium result. And if your albumin's low, the magnesium will be low. It's got nothing to do with magnesium. So, but other tests to look at the true storage places of magnesium. So you can get white cell magnesium levels. They're useful, and nobody does those things.
So it's. I mean, I've undertaken some of these tests myself at Imperial College. And the only designator that I had for that type of test was a bone profile test, which would include true levels of magnesium. But I can. If you give me your email address, I can forward you some information that will help you.
Just following on from that, I've never had my magnesium tested, but I used to get muscle cramps, especially when I exercised, and a personal trainer recommended I take magnesium, and the cramps went away. So if you get cramps, then take it, I reckon.
Can you eat your mic? We can't hear a word you're saying.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, if you get muscle cramps, I used to get muscle cramps, and I found that after taking magnesium, the cramps went away. So, as far as I was concerned, that was a good enough reason to keep on taking it. My question is about MCT oil. I don't know what it is. What is MCT oil? How does it affect ketosis, and is it worthwhile taking?
So MCT oil stands for medium chain triglycerides, and it's probably the purest form of getting MCTs into your body. Some people say, well, just do coconut oil, and I believe coconut oil is like 1/10 of the concentration of MCTs, of just doing straight up MCT oil. I'm personally not a fan of people trying to get into ketosis using MCT oil because it's a very fast acting form of ketone. It will raise your ketones, that's for sure, but only for about 2 to 3 hours. So you take the MCT oil, you have your bulletproof coffee or whatever you're going to do to get it into your body, and then you prick your finger an hour later and you're going to have 3.2 millimolar on the blood ketone. Man, I'm in ketosis. Well, wait 3 more hours after that and test again, and if you're not carbohydrate restricted, moderated in protein and eating healthy fats, guess what? You're no longer going to be no longer going to be 3.2 on the blood ketone meter. I think people that are athletes that want like a quick burst of energy for that purpose, absolutely MCT oil is great on a consistent basis to maybe encourage you to get into ketosis, maybe, but I think at the end of the day, you gotta do it nutritionally if you're gonna get the full effects of what nutritional ketosis is gonna give you.
Thanks.
Just on that as well, MCT oil I know is used by a lot of endurance athletes, so whilst they're out doing what they do, in order to just give them a bit of a boost and make sure that they continue to use that fat, they might use MCT because it becomes available so quickly.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, in science the belief was in natural selection your body would adjust to the environment, the strongest species would survive. So obviously we've had fruits and vegetables and stuff longer than we've had processed food. So you would think that with science believing that that's the case, we survive based on what we have, that's all we need. But apparently we didn't. We need carbs, we need all this stuff. And so did science just prove themselves wrong with that? Like, how do they come to that conclusion?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you're asking, but did science get it wrong? Well, it wasn't the science, but I think the science was misinterpreted. So if you go back and you look at some of the science from about 40 or 50 years ago, there was lots of cherry picking of information. There were lots of things done in order to promote grains for particular reasons, whether that be financial reasons or to promote industry. There's lots of money trails that you can follow to see whether that science was correct or not. And I think that's a big part of why the way that we have been eating for the last 40 or 50 years.
Can I just put in a 5 cents worth on lots of other cultures around the world eat grains. They, third world countries, they survive on quite high carbohydrate diets. They don't seem to get the problems we get of obesity and all the metabolic syndrome and diseases. So why don't they get it? And I think, and I'd be interested in what the panel say, I think the difference here is sugar through childhood and early adulthood that blunts our, that messes up our insulin sensitivity, and probably virtually all of us here in this room have probably had a fair dose of sugar through childhood and early and middle and even later adult years. And had we not had that, we would manage certainly the carb load. There might be questions over specific grains, but what does anyone on the panel think of that?
I'd just add to that, I think our environment is radically different as well, just with how our sleep is, and there's a bunch of other factors which I think have played a big role into why we can't tolerate carbohydrates as well in this modern age. And also relating back to the science and the studies, just what I want to add is, in some studies there's actually a bit of a paradox where they can show fats are bad, depending on how they make the study, but in the context of a low carb diet, fat's always been great and there's no issues with that. So it's just a bit of science play with a lot of them, and animal and mouse models as well, I wouldn't trust those.
And I think that's the point we should emphasise. This is not a matter of up your fat and see how you go. It's only up your fat in the context of a lower carbohydrate diet. It's a disaster if you just up the fat and don't change the carbs.
Yeah, I think it's also worthwhile pointing out that probably 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now, people look back and say, we knew nothing about nutrition. We were completely wrong. A lot of the studies that we're referencing now will later be proved to be inaccurate, incorrect. The one thing we can be certain of, however, is that adopting real food, living lifestyle practices that are more aligned to nature, how we were designed, how we were evolved, that will never be refuted. So I think we may be able to dispute or debate some of the smaller details, but the real truth is how we actually respond to where the evolution has brought us to today. And I think the common ground of avoiding processed foods, avoiding artificial foods, avoiding unnecessary toxins, trying to making sure there's some activity, looking at all the other factors of a healthy lifestyle like managing sleep and stress, all of those combined are far more helpful than any study that I could reference today directing me as to what I should do in terms of my lifestyle practice.
An interesting story about distorting nature and how we look back on things. The most common allergy around the Mediterranean is to olives. Because when you distort, in agriculture so much, and it's probably selected species as well, and when those massive olive groves come into blossom, that's the most common cause of eczema and asthma around the Mediterranean. It's unheard of here. But so whenever you distort nature, filter it, or there's going to be a consequence to pay.
Yes, my question is, do you believe that we need to attempt to also have a balance in our bodies between alkalinity and acidity? Do you believe in that whole theory of the pH balance? And if so, animal proteins are meant to be acid forming, so do we have a balance? Or do you think that is a bit of a sham, the whole theory?
So LCHF is extremely alkaline. I actually tested that during my 1-year nutritional ketosis experiment. I sat there and peed on sticks every single day, seeing if it would change. And it was always the really, great color of like 7 or 8, which is great alkaline. If it was acidic, it would be 4 to 5, and it never got close. And I ate a lot of meat, and a lot of fat, and all the things that they say are acidic in the body. That goes back to my first talk today. You can't believe all the health headlines that you see. You have to kind of run it through your own BS filter and figure out what's right.
I'll just add to that, just because a food appears to be acidic, it doesn't mean that your body deals with it and creates acid. So sometimes when you eat what's classified as acidic food, you actually end up producing more alkaline substances within your body, like increased bicarb levels, to level that out. I'm not entirely convinced about the need to be testing this and to be into balance. There is a bit of some people who are, but I'm not quite convinced about it myself. Yeah.
It's an excellent question. Because the body regulates its pH. It's one of the most important things. We've got the lungs, the kidneys, the liver. They're all there to regulate the pH. So our body as a whole does not become acidic or not. But the metabolism generates acids or generates alkali. So when we talk about this acidity, it's not that your body is suddenly acid. The process within the body of generating acids.
So should we not pay too much attention to them saying animal proteins are acidic and green vegetables are alkaline, so we should try about
Not in terms of the acid itself. So animal proteins have phosphate and sulfate, and we can't breathe those off. They form acids in the body that we have to get rid of in the urine. So it's true that animal protein generates acids. What the impact of those acids are, that's what the whole theory is about. Yeah.
I'd just like to say thank you to the people who have organised today and participated and spoken. I've learnt a lot and found it very riveting, so thank you. My question was, well, the one thing that I haven't heard anything about today, with all the different elements of food that we've spoken about, is sweets, because I really like sweets. I seem to recall, I think, watching a talk that Tim Noakes gave last time, where I think it was in August, where he spoke about artificially sweetening some of the foods that he ate with Splenda, which is sucralose mixed with maltodextrin, and xylitol, which I've been trying. It works very well. But then I was reading through Dr. Bernstein's book about diabetes, and he's talking about maltodextrin and xylitol being carbohydrates in their own right, and therefore putting your blood sugar up as well. So I guess I just wanted to find out from anybody on the stage as to, or anybody in the audience, as to what the story was with those additives.
I think, a similar question came up when we were in Mornington, Rod and I, and we had a bit of a differing view. My thoughts around sweeteners is I try and avoid them as much as possible, because I believe that we are stimulated to crave or look for sweetness when we continually feed that. So, the more, even if it's not sugar itself, if you're stimulating your sweet tooth, you'll continue to look for those sweet things. But if you have a period of taking it away and maybe suffering a little bit and being able to go that distance, your taste certainly changes and that desire for sweetness disappears. And you might find that hard to believe from where you are right now, but I thought I was an absolute chocoholic and could sit down and eat a family block no problem and loved it. And I have no desire whatsoever for any chocolate or anything sweet anymore, and when I do have it, it's sickly. So that might sound ridiculous from where you stand, but your taste definitely changes, and trying to go a period of not having it so that you can dull that need for it, in my personal opinion, that's what I try and encourage.
Can I be devil's advocate and say, what's worse, a can of ordinary Coke or a can of Diet Coke? There are 9 teaspoons of sugar in the ordinary Coke, so I don't think we have the answers. But if you needed a bridge to get you off sweeteners, I think it would be the lesser of the two evils to go the Diet Coke.
I just have from my experience, I found using artificial sweeteners actually made me crave more sugar and carb foods, and cutting them out helped me with my own hunger. I think it just depends on where you are at. I think you're quite lean yourself, so you might be able to tolerate it and not have any issues, but someone like me, if I have those, all my carb cravings came back, and also on my glucometer, it made my blood glucose go up to the highest readings I've ever gone after having artificial sweeteners.
I remember reading an interesting study a few years ago about diet sodas and the effect on appetite. And in the study, the evidence was that people who drank more diet drinks it actually increased their appetite. There was actually some effect on insulin secretion, even though there was no sugar content. But also, purely from avoiding artificial processed foods kind of point of view, something that's designed to be 100 times sweeter than sugar. I mean, there's just something about that which kind of frightens me. I don't know what it is. I'll probably find out when it's too late. But I'd rather avoid that now. I'm not saying I would choose a can of Coke over a Diet Coke. I would avoid both of those. But there are studies linking a lot of artificial sweeteners to being carcinogenics, for example. So I think we need to be careful about endorsing artificial sweeteners as a solution, when we probably should just say, just avoid, just go cold turkey and avoid sugar or anything sweet for that period of time, because I don't think the diet solution is any better for us. That's my opinion.
What was interesting to me when I came off of sugar was I started noticing the sweetness in foods I never thought were sweet before. Almonds, who knew they were actually a little bit sweet when you eat them? So there is something to be said about what the panel is saying, that coming off of that sweetness, like on a consistent basis, allows you to appreciate the natural sweetness that's in real food.
Right. Okay, Pat, one more question.
Got two.
Okay.
The first one, I think my most important one. I've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and my 4-year-old is really carb addicted, and we're slowly bringing him around to eating meat. So he hasn't really eaten much meat over the last year. We ate steak last night, which was quite exciting for us. And he's very we've managed to get him away from the starchy breads. We're a paleo family, so we're away from all of that. But he still really loves his fruit. And I know that there is goodness in fruit. And he's only young, he's only 4, so I'm just wondering how much I should be limiting his fruit, or letting him, you know, maybe not go nuts, but still eat it. So he loves bananas, which I know is one of the highest ones.
He hasn't been exposed to the standard Australian diet, so let him eat the fruit. Fruit's a real food, and I don't see that there's any harm in a kid eating fruit.
So I've got 2 kids, and particularly my 7-year-old was absolutely carb addicted when he was much younger, and I thought it would be a nightmare to bring him around to this way of eating, and he just loves it and he thrives on it. We did it little bit by little bit. I don't restrict my kids' carbohydrates at all, so they have as much fruit and natural carbohydrates as they want.
So, sorry to cut you off.
That's all right.
He basically wakes up and goes, banana please.
Yeah, what I do try and do is make sure that they have it together with some form of fat. So like if they're going to have some strawberries, they've got a bit of cream on it, or the banana's going into a smoothie with a whole lot of other bits and pieces as well. But as long as you're giving them natural carbs, and you know, you're on the right track, and I wouldn't worry about that.
Can I, second one? Just really quickly, it's probably more to you, Vicky. We just got our information pack for Kinder for next year, and it's full of low-fat dairy, make sure there's lots of starchy foods and blah, and I'm just really concerned about him sort of being an outcast, and I'm just wondering what you've experienced, because he loves his food. He thinks 90% dark chocolate is the best thing ever, and I don't want to make him strange, but I also don't want to get him targeted by even like teachers going, that's not a healthy meal, with what I send for him. So I'm just wondering how you can.
Oh, and there's a huge push. I know I saw Sarah Wilson put something up today about healthy lunches. Pete Evans is onto this. Karen Zinn is onto this. And there's more and more movement to prevent these kids being discriminated against. I get backlash from my own family about being different and depriving my kids because I don't allow them to have soft drink. And some things you've just got to be pretty strong about and talk to your kids about why they're having this. You think that they don't understand, but if you tell them the reasons, even a 4 and 5-year-old, they'll get it. And this is good for you, this is what makes you strong, etc. They understand. And my kids promote this way of eating to their friends and have even converted some of their friends now. So, sometimes you've got to take it a bit harsh, but it'll be well worth it.
Thank you.
Okay, well look...
Can we make a plug as well?
Yes.
That sugar film. I'm not plugging it, I won't need plugging, but the trailer's out on YouTube if you want to see the trailer of the full movie. It's being shown at the Amsterdam Film Festival, an Australian movie about HIV. And it's turned out to be aimed directly at children. Because unless we can capture their minds and have pride and interest in what they're eating. So Damon's signed contracts with schools and books, and it's all aimed at primary school kids. So we need to, if we're telling them what to do, they have to believe it and understand it, and it's going to be a tremendous thing.
What's the name of the film?
It's called That Sugar Film. It was going to be called Sickly Sweet, but people thought they wouldn't really want to watch that. So just look it up on the internet, the YouTube or the trailer is fantastic.
Yeah, school lunches in America have gotten atrocious. The First Lady of our country has mandated that calories be reduced, and they're even pushing for now when someone brings a meal from home and they don't have enough healthy whole grain, they give them graham crackers as the whole grain, and make the kid eat it because they need that mandatory amount of whole grain. So we've gotten really crazy. I'm really happy to hear that this film is getting out there, and hopefully it changes.
Great. Look, better bring it to a close. Love to thank Jimmy for coming all this way. Great pleasure to see you again, Jimmy. And And thanks to all the presenters, and thank you for supporting this, and we'll be up to more things, and hope to see more of you. Thank you.
Let's give one round of applause for to organise this event.